Yay.
I think I'm recording. It says
Mm-hmm.
recording.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep, I'm recording.
One can only imagine.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who wants to go first?
Hang on, I need to text my. Or I'm just gonna go tell my mom not to make noise because I hear her babying the dog.
Mm.
I mean, I could go first, probably.
I could go whenever because no matter what, I'm going to be standing.
Okay. Yo, why don't you go first then?
All right.
Volunteering you.
I'll volunteer myself. Let's go ahead. Share screen. Go to here. There you go. I can move you out of the way so we can do the present. Well, I'm going to wait for Christina to get back to start.
Were we supposed to have a presentation?
Visual.
They had I'm doing a presentation just to get the visuals in.
Okay.
And also to help people follow along. I don't have like notes on here or anything. I just have my sources on here at the end, and I have my just visuals on here. It's better for me to do it here because they're all online visuals, so I have to like put them on an online format.
Oh wait, okay, visual was optional. I have lizards. The lizards are my visual cues.
All right. Yeah, no, I have all my visual cues on here to just kind of show you because you kind of need them for my topic. All right. So if any of you remember a specific kind of big thing that had happened recently with the game Sekiro, maybe in the last 2 years, I think it was, where there was a big complaint about video games and some of them needing an easy mode. And then everybody on Twitter went ahead and complained about it. Like that was such a big, massive thing in the gaming community and was all stemming from game journalists needing an easy mode because they're just not good at the game. And you know it's an interesting topic, but like it's one that can like a lot of people can discuss about for like hours on end. Like I personally have discussed about that topic on hours on end if it's good or if it's not. But the problem around that is that kind of shows what people want to focus on in video games, right? We're always so focused on, man, I'm good at this game, but if someone else beats it on an easy mode, they can go ahead and say, I beat it, you're not that good. Like gamers are so heavily focused on themselves that sometimes they just forget other people. Like an easy mode wouldn't be that bad. It would help people that just don't want to play the game, but it's such an interesting thing that they just don't care. And it kind of leads in the idea of like video games and their discussions about video game accessibility. So that kind of brings into the main thing I wanted to talk about today, which really is talking about game accessibility and specifically the lack of care that games have for gamers and well as game developers have on how accessibility is done in video games. This has been a topic that kind of like a lot of people talk about. People like over in IGN and also The Verge have both sent articles out specifically talking about this issue with different stuff. IGN, The Verge talking about specifically, easy modes and things like that. Well, IGN went way more on the UI segments, and both of them have really good stuff. But I think the thing about it is that they always focus so much on just trying to help themselves still, which is not a bad thing. It does help other people, but it still didn't. It felt like they were just putting it out just to put it out. Like gamers and game developers and game critics and everyone else don't care. I have an example. I have two pictures right here. I have one of Twitter simply because this is where a lot of the topics begin on. And I also have another example of a presentation in Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein is a very popular game, so it's really known for this sort of thing. It's a hard game, it's a difficult game. And so on the easy mode, it's called Can I Play Daddy? It's for the babies. It's for the small children that like want to play the game and things like that. And so despite all this is kind of the idea that people like bring up when it comes to accessibility. With The Verge, they sent after the article for Sekiro came out, when they talk about getting an easy mode, they ended up getting a lot of backlash on it by gamers as well as game developers. Because here's the thing: Making things like easy modes, subtitles, UI, and things like that cost a lot of money. Microsoft has actually said a statement talking about like it probably cost a few $1,000s just to provide subtitles to a game that they decided to do last minute. You know, if a game that they realize they need subtitles, it still costs thousands of dollars just to get the programmers to put in the subtitles. That doesn't include paying people for subtitles for specific languages and things like that. So it's such an interesting thing, the fact that like these factors in the game are just ignored, you know? But I want to talk about why you really should care about this. You know, I was just discussing how literally everybody hates it and game developers don't want to do it because it costs too much money. Why should we care? You know, like, yes, of course, get people accessibility, but why should we care? Well, the very simple answer is, well, there's a lot of benefits in the end. Accessibility doesn't just relate to easy modes. In fact, easy modes can be a completely different topic altogether. Accessibility really does relate to giving people that have different problems the way to enjoy the game. This is an example from Minecraft Dungeons. This is their accessibility page. You can see this has many different options that allow for them to kind of choose around. We have like text-to-speech, subtitles, enemy outline colors, things like that. Each of them providing a way for people to experience the game. Text-to-speech can help people with reading impairments. You know, they have problems reading, or they just or something like that. Subtitles for people that are have hearing impairments, and enemy outline colors can even be for the colorblind. These factors do cost a lot of money. However, they are important in the end for for the health of the gaming community, right? Overall, the gaming community becomes more healthy by providing these aspects and makes it more accessible to everyone. And I can talk all day, all night about just the hypothetical of it just helps everybody, you know? You should just listen to me, right? But I could just also provide you with an example. The video game Overwatch. Overwatch is a first-person shooter made by Blizzard with a lot of gimmick characters and things like that. It's a shooter that specifically has a lot of UI options, a lot of color coordination, a lot of sound effects that are specific to the game. And so obviously, if you are someone that needs hearing impairments, colorblind, things like that, you really do need modes for that in order to even enjoy the game. It's very much a visual and hearing game. And so Blizzard obviously had to at least put something in for a colorblind mode. Here is the colorblind mode they added when released. It looks awful. This is not a colorblind mode. Pro players had reported off to Comic Book Gaming, specifically one pro player literally named Colorblind with a K. He's one of the top 500 players in the game, and he needs colorblind. But he had reported here how difficult it is for him to play the game. The colorblind modes that they provided were not actual modes. They were instead just filters that they had put onto the game that just happened to have colors that they could see well. The game doesn't look any better, doesn't help them. It just, they can kind of see better. This is obviously the game developers didn't think of the colorblind mode until way last minute. And since things like this cost a lot of money, they simply added it into the end. This actually stayed like this, despite the complaints, I say about a year into the game's life. There's an entire year where pro players and things like that had to deal with stuff like this, basically this, filters onto the game. And it was awful. However, around when the Overwatch League began, Blizzard wanted to really set the game into the esports sort of community. They had to actually put a colorblind mode in because a lot of the pro players began to complain. Colorblind had a lot of his other friends who were also pro players that would be joining the league complain directly to Blizzard and eventually get it to change. They ended up changing it in a big update to this style instead. This is this new colorblind mode. You can see that they have the filter option that they had initially, but they also have completely customization for the UI colors and things like that. This is mine. I am not colorblind. But however, I use this colorblind mode when I play the game because personally, I find it a great way for customization. And that's kind of the thing about accessibility and the reason why you should care a lot more about it. This is called the curb cut effect. The curb cut effect is brought up by Stanford. It's a term coined by Stanford University, simply talking about the benefits of accessibility to other people outside of it. You guys know, like, so say you have a sidewalk, right? You know how it always bends down right around where like in areas so like the people in wheelchairs can come around, things like that. That's a curb cut. And the idea behind the curb cut effect is talking about how that cut, despite being initially simply for people with wheelchairs, ends up helping more people in the long run. It helps the old, like the ramps end up helping old people that have back problems. You know, they can't really get up the stairs, or this help people on dollies, or just simply carrying heavy equipment up, you know, on the sidewalk or up someplace. You know, this helps just a skateboard kid just go around back and forth. This ends up helping people all around. And this was brought up in Overwatch. Accessibility in video games has the exact same effect. I literally was just talking to the people currently in my group about how they end up getting benefits from it. Putting in subtitles into a game ends up helping people that simply just don't have time to always just have the game volume on, or maybe they do have hearing impairments. But me personally, I put subtitles on my game. I put subtitles on Minecraft. I mean, that's just a small game. I put subtitles on that because sometimes I want to listen to music. Putting in those elements ended up becoming a great thing that someone who doesn't have these problems, ends up enjoying and appreciating the game more for. These elements help not just the people that need it, but the people that could really just want it, you know? And this kind of relates into Overwatch. In the mic.com, they ended up actually, the pro players colorblind ended up going to the mic.com and ended up talking about how amazing this colorblind mode ended up being. This was exactly what he wanted, you know, changes to the color that you could customize to the specific UI, specific elements of the game that you needed to see. Here is just a picture of a streamer who ended up changing up the colors. The pink is, instead of being blue for the allies, is pink now. It looks nice. You know, it's a very nice color that they decided to use. It's nice, it's beautiful, it's just a nice thing to look at. It provides a layer of customization, but it also legitimately helps those who cannot see the UI due to their color blindness. It's an important and an amazing element of the game that, due to them changing, ended up helping more people in the long run. And that's kind of the idea behind the curb cut effect, behind people caring about accessibility. I did want to talk a little bit about one thing, though. I know that you all probably just like, okay, what do we care? What are we going to do? We're not the ones that decide this. You know, why are you complaining to us? Because we have the voice. We are the consumers. We are the people that can complain to the game developers to implement these things initially, so that way we could have it in the game, right? Make the subtitle texts larger. Make the UI, you know, game elements more obvious, or allow us to change the colors for colors, because it helps us with customization and it helps people that actually need it. Microsoft is actually doing an amazing example with this. I just brought up the example of Minecraft. Microsoft actually sent out a report talking about their big plans of accessibility. They are one of the few companies that are really pushing in this sort of idea. You know, Minecraft recently had changed their UI to help make ores. You know, like there's ores in Minecraft, diamond, iron. They made it look more obvious because people might have issues seeing it. You know, instead of relying on a texture pack or something to change the visuals, they themselves did it. They put the effort in to actually fully change the graphics of the main game because they knew it would help everyone in the long run. Microsoft is a great example of what we should be valuing in a company, because in the end, it ends up helping everybody. And of course, there's, again, they kind of bring what I was talking about earlier about game popularity and kind of the need of accessibility. This is more something that I think we should all just more talk about specific elements of a game and what can we prioritize, and, you know, game developers seeing what they might need, you know, just a question of which game needs these options. Example, Minecraft, or the example I have on the right, League of Legends. If you don't play video games, tell me what's on that screen. Tell me what's happening. I'm going to take a guess that you don't know what's happening, and that's fair because I don't know either because I don't play League of Legends. But I do play other games very similar to it, and I understand that the UI is very necessary for the game, and having these accessibility options is important. Say you can't, you're colorblind, or maybe you just can't see that well. Even if you knew what was happening in the game, things become so muddled, and it becomes an issue to look at the game. Games like that really do need that accessibility for everybody. However, a game like Mario, I think it's fine. It's such a vibrant game, and color elements aren't too important to the game. It's a little bit, so it does provide a little bit amount of modes that you could definitely need. However, the priority of Mario having these elements versus League of Legends having these elements is very different. That's kind of what we should be talking about. What games need these elements? What companies should we really be pushing for these elements, right? You want to know what you can do? Go to Twitter, go to Reddit, go wherever you want, and just talk about this. We had this whole discussion about if people that are bad at video games should have an easy mode, but we don't discuss actual important issues. And that's kind of what I wanted to push about today. I wanted to talk about the curb cut effect. I wanted to talk about all this stuff simply because we as the gaming community don't care. And I think it's about time that we begin to finally care. And here are all my references. We have different reports. I actually do recommend looking at all these reports. A lot of them are people talking about their own personal experiences. We have a Reddit post by someone who talked about their vulnerabilities, how it was an issue for them. We have literally the articles I brought up from The Verge, Comic Book Gaming, Mike.com from Pro Players. We have Minecraft from Microsoft talking about their big plans. Even reports from the Washington Post talking about accessibility and things like that. So I do recommend looking in and doing your own research. I am simply just providing you that sort of message and who's taking charge and some good examples. But please go do your own research and go finally talk about these issues. Thank you.
What is UI?
UI is basically the game overlay. It's like the game elements. Like a health bar or a stamina bar in a video game, things like that.
But like you were talking about specifically team-based UI, right? Like whether or not they're on your team, kind of thing. Or
yes, that's what I was that's the thing you're talking about. UI are basically game elements, things like that. So the bad guys are red. The red outline on the bad guy, that's a sort of UI element that is necessary.
Okay.
Things about that.
Okay. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions?
I don't think so.
All right.
A really good speech, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now, how do I stop sharing my screen?
There it is. The red button. Yeah.
I see it. Thanks.
Would it possibly be okay if I go next? My lizard is not tolerating being out for much longer.
I hear one.
All right.
Bring a noisy one.
Bring a noisy one? Oh gosh, grape.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
She's wedged herself underneath a thing in her cage right now because she keeps doing it. I shouldn't have put that in there for her. All right. Give me 1 second. Scroll down on this.
Actually, give me 1 second.
Lizard.
Where's my place to sit? Hold on a second.
I wonder. I'm gonna see if I can find my skink real quick so I can use him as well. Nope, no idea where he is. Okay, I'll just go then. All right. So, I'm sure everybody here at some point, at some time, has had some sort of animal that they care so much about. It can be anything. It can be the standard things like dogs or cats. It can be reptiles, like I think are really cool. Some people have birds, hamsters. The common thing among all of those species is that there are definitely always people who have no idea what they're getting themselves into, and they don't seem to care. most of the time, this is fine. People know that those people are in the wrong. They are willing to accept, hey, we need to correct this. But there's other times where people just don't care. For example, anytime you see a dog or a cat being mistreated, your reaction is going to be to condemn the people who are causing those issues. You're going to see them not feeding it correctly or not taking enough or giving it enough exercise, and you're going to think, hey, can you fix that? The issue here that I have been seeing is that because of the lack of care or the general just overall disgust that people feel towards reptiles as a whole, this lack of care and this mistreatment has been taken from a level of just a few people who don't understand what they're doing to people actively and consistently spreading misinformation with their care. And it's not just the reptiles that this affects either. It's gone so far as to actually damage the environment in the long run. I'm sure, especially for those who live in Florida, that you have heard at some point in time the phrase, the only good snake is a dead snake. This is something that so many people think. It's just that phrase is so common, people don't really see any reason to not believe it. It's not true, of course. Snakes have a lot of good impacts on our environments. They're able to take out populations of rodents that have overtaken areas. They're able to just generally stop the spread of disease by keeping control over those populations, but people don't care. And it's not even just snakes that this affects, nor is it just things like trying to kill them. Even for those who do care about reptiles, the fact of the misinformation running so deep at this point in time is that even care guides by popular reptile places like Petco or PetSmart have been filled with things that are severely outdated that people just don't care at this point to update or don't have the energy to actually look much further than what is at the base level of being able to find it. A good example of this is PetSmart's Bearded Dragon Care Guide. They've got it on their website. They'll hand it out at their store when you're getting them. And one of the biggest things that you'll see on there is that they recommend sand or a similar substrate to sand for those reptiles. And it's not just bearded dragons either. They'll do the same thing for leopard geckos. But the problem here with that specific bit of misinformation, sand is an extremely dangerous substrate to go with for things like geckos and bearded dragons. They are built for sand in the wild, which has been compacted and is difficult to actually dig out, which is why they're good at digging. They can dig out little caves for themselves to hang out in. But in captivity, the sand that you're getting is just going to be this very loose, very easy to pick up or kick around substrate. And reptiles like leopard geckos and bearded dragons, if you spend time with them, you can see that they will start to lick their surroundings to see what is going on. It just helps them to get a better idea of where they are and to have a better idea of the smells that are around them. And this lets them eat the sand, pretty much. They're not very good at differentiating between seeing what's around them and seeing where their food is and seeing the sand beneath their feet. This leads to impaction, which is at this point, because people don't care to actually look up much more than what they are given, it is a huge cause of death among people's pets. It is the buildup of sand or other loose substrates in the reptile's gut that they are not able to pass or digest, and it eventually causes enough damage to their system that they just die. It just completely takes them out. Another issue is with snakes. People think, oh, I'll just get this pet snake for my kid. They can just hold it every once in a while, it'll be fine. And snakes are very good pets. Snakes are not aggressive like people seem to think that they are. They're willing to just hang out around you or sit on your shoulders. But people also don't understand that snakes are they're creatures of habit, as much as most other people are. They can learn things just as a dog or a cat can learn a trick. If you are only really ever opening the snake's cage to drop in a rat for it to eat, it's eventually going to associate anything coming into its cage as something that it is supposed to be eating, which leads to people witnessing their behavioral issues of them trying to strike at or bite things coming into their cage. And it's not an act of aggression, it's just the snake making a simple mistake. This specific issue leads to people actually making the mistake of just letting the reptiles go. It is very common. It's a common issue, especially in Florida, where we have seen the rise of a lot of invasive species, such as things like iguanas or tegus, and especially Burmese pythons, which I am sure all of you have at some point in time heard about or had to do a project on, just because of the scope of how large of an area that they've taken over. But people just release them. They don't even think, their assumption is it's a reptile. They're meant for the wild. It should be fine. And sometimes it is fine, and that is the problem, because these reptiles are very, very ready to breed with others and take over the area, especially when there are no natural predators. This issue is discussed pretty heavily in the article of Releasing Captive Reptiles and Amphibians that is made by Melissa Kaplan. It was posted in 2014, but all of the information in it is still pretty relative today. When you put something new into an environment, it's going to have an impact, whether it's good or bad. And most of the time with reptiles, since they are natural predators for the most part, it's bad. And not only that issue affects our environment, it affects keepers and reptile keepers as well, as there has been a lot of legislation recently that is just heavily biased against reptiles because of the general distaste for them. For example, and you can find a lot of information about this one specifically on USARK's website, which is the United States Association of Reptile Keepers. There has been an article passed that is going to ban the keeping of pet tegus and pet green iguanas in Florida. Outright bans them. They didn't really care to actually think too heavily on ways that they could maybe encourage keepers to take better care of their own pets, maybe put a couple more laws regulating the breeding of them. They just kind of took away the right entirely. And this is, not only does it negatively affect the people who already had positive relationships with the animals and who are willing to take good care of them, it affects people who had them just to have them, as those people are either going to maybe try to actually find a good home for the pet outside of Florida, but they're more likely just going to toss it outside because they know it's going to survive out there, or they don't care enough to really get away with finding something else. And another example of this problem of them not really putting much effort into thinking about what to do about the issues of the reptiles in our environment is our solutions before this to handling the iguana population. They decided, hey, let's just put some bounties on the iguanas' heads and have people go out and shoot them. It works in the short run, but that in no way makes sure that we're actually going to be keeping an eye on the population. It just encourages more violence against reptiles in general. A lot of people can't tell the difference between different types of lizards. I've had people, like friends, teachers alike, look at things like a green anole, which are those common little brown and green lizards that you'll see outside, and say, oh, look, a chameleon, or oh, look, an iguana. There's no differentiation because people they just don't like the lizards. They don't care. I think it's pretty silly because I think an iguana is quite a big difference from being 4 feet to the little 6-inch anoles that are outside, but you never know. People will find the connections that they think are there. So how can you actually do something to help? It's not as big of a step as you think it is. Really what people need to be doing, even if they don't really care that much about reptiles, is finding ways to support people who actually do care enough to be spreading the proper information about them. For example, reptile shows are very common. There's one called Repticon that happens in Orlando every couple months, and it's a very small fee to actually go inside and look around, and it's not just reptiles that they have. It's a lot of fun to walk around and see what's going on. You could support the people who are getting booths there by actually going to the show and seeing what they have to offer. And you can also see some awesome art and learn some cool things about Florida's native wildlife, because alongside there being breeders there who are willing to tell you a good amount of information on how to actually take a good amount of care of your pet, there are also people there who are there to educate you about our environment and who bring cool things like crocodiles and alligators that you can hold and take pictures of for a small price. Not only that, if you don't have the time to really go outside or go to somewhere to do something, you could support creators online like Snake Discovery, where they're spending their time and their effort, their energy making video after video, showing cool interactions with their own pets, as well as providing good information on how to take care of these animals for the people who actually want to take care of them in the long run. Plus, the one that I mentioned earlier, you can always go to USARK. Their website has a lot of different petitions that they post in relation to taking care of reptiles, such as the petitions that they've been trying to get filled out so that we can actually overturn those laws that are banning tegus and iguanas in Florida. And hopefully with enough people going to these places and finding this information, we can eventually get to a point where people, well, they may necessarily not want to be around reptiles or hold them. They have enough of the mind to actually think that the animals are cool, or maybe just refrain from spreading information that just leads to their injury and death. So hopefully you guys have a lot of fun looking at those resources and looking up videos about these animals, because they're a lot of fun and there are a lot of cool things to learn about them beyond just how to actually take care of them. So yeah, there's Banana. Have a great day, guys. If you have any questions as well, I'm willing to answer them.
I did hear about the reptile thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly which ones there were, but I did read about it, and I can kind of see why they do it, because they figure more people are not gonna care and like take care of these animals than actually will.
Yeah.
So they're trying to take the easy solution and just be like, all right, well, since none of you seem to be very responsible, we'll just get rid of them.
My thought is they're like, the main issue with it is that they're so readily available that people just kind of pick them up. Like iguanas you can get for $15 at certain places. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if there's more like good, valuable information about their diets and how like the actual requirements that they have, because tegus need heat spots of like 120 degrees, which is not something most people can provide. And also like a 6x4 space. So it's like, maybe people realize, that's not something I can handle.
I don't particularly like iguanas. I always see them going by, and I'm like,
oh, they're mean. They're so mean.
But like, I remember there was one in the middle of the road, and me and my mom thought it was like a branch, so we kept going, and then we saw it turn its head, and we felt so bad. Oh. Like, even though we don't like iguanas, we didn't want to run it over, you know? It just feels bad.
People that do just want to hit things. There's like, people will go out of their way to hit snakes with cars, and it's like, are you kidding me?
Why? I don't particularly like them, but like, I'm not going to sit there and chop its head off.
Yeah.
Unless it's like me or like a baby or the snake. I mean, probably the snake, but like, it's normally not. I mean, you're not really going to find yourself face to face with like a very poisonous reptile, maybe a water moccasin.
Well, that's the main thing is like some snakes eat poisonous snakes. So some snakes are.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't like the poisonous snakes? Here, have the snake that eats them.
There's one in Florida and a lot of other places. It's king snakes will eat venomous snakes.
Black racers too.
Oh, yeah, the black racers too. But the king snakes especially, people will mistake them for being the venomous snakes because there are a lot of them that have patterns similar to coral snake. Right. So they'll just kill them instead.
Yeah, coral snakes are real small though.
And coral
they're
snakes
very pretty.
Yeah.
They're rear fangs, so instead of just biting you and you're immediately injected with their venom, it takes them a good second of gnawing on you to actually get it in you.
As long as just rip it out.
Yeah, if you get it off you quick enough, you'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I used to catch lizards all the time.
I still do.
There also used to be a bunch that just came into the house, and I was like, all right.
Oh, yeah.
It was when there was like a decently fat lizard that was laying eggs. I was like, you need to leave.
Yeah.
You gotta get out of here, pal.
All right, who volunteers to be next?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I gotta get up. All right. I looked at the comments and she was like, there's a glare, like a really bad glare. And I was like, oh. So I moved the position a bit.
Okay.
All right. When it comes to feminism, it's a good thing to have because there are obviously issues that we need to take care of in order to make living equal as it can be. Obviously, life is going to throw different things at every person, but if we can mitigate what we can control, it would be a lot better. But there are certain aspects of feminism and priorities that I don't agree with, because to me, as a female, it's foolish. I understand that the pay gap and like stereotyping like women into being like mothers or housewives isn't fair. But when we're talking about things that really need to be prioritized, I feel like those things that we should be prioritizing would be things like, I don't know, honor killings, where you just get killed if you do something that a man doesn't like because it brings dishonor on your family. Or being raped simply because you're there and it's the man's right, you know? To me, I feel like that should be on the top list. And in many countries, in like East Asia, that kind of thing is normal. And it's not their fault. That's just how they were raised. What happens in these countries with honor killings is they're done to a female member of a family who have brought dishonor for things like refusing a marriage, like an arranged marriage, or being raped, having sex outside of marriage, relations outside of marriage, or wanting to leave an abusive spouse. And a lot of those reasons are either outside of their control or something that should be in their control. They're done in a variety of ways. Acid attacks, you hear about those often, where people just dump acid on these women. And a lot of times they survive those acid attacks, but they're not going to be the same. They're going to be traumatized from that. Anybody would. A lot of the times they're beaten with rocks and things like that, burned. And it's not a religious problem. We can't just say, oh, it's just Muslims doing that. It's Hindus doing that. It's more of a cultural and like regional problem instead. A lot of the times you'll hear about this happening. It'll be in countries like India, in Pakistan, places on Southeast Asia, maybe sometimes in the Middle East. But if you actually look, you'll see that Christians do this as well. Obviously, Christians aren't as common in these areas, so you think of it differently, but it's still an occurrence. And it's important to realize that you can't just condemn a religion for something that's not actually religious. Now, the other issue, besides honor killings, that I feel like feminists should prioritize is sexual assault in these countries. In places like India, the average amount of women that are raped daily is 100 people, based on Rosario 2020. In 2016 alone, there were 39,000 reported cases in 1 year. And note that a lot of these people are either married to their rapist, arranged marriages, things like that, and also a lot of people don't report when this happens because of reasons like that. Also, they don't want to go through honor killings because they reported something like this. According to Bandyopadhyay, 2018, about 99% of these sexual assault cases go unreported. 99%. So imagine 39,000 reported cases. That's a lot. In Pakistan, a rape occurs every hour. Gang rape occurs every 2. And again, because the cultural views on women are very similar, you can assume that while it may not be exactly the same, there's a good amount of cases that go underreported as well. Feminism, I think, should be focused on women that are in need of protection, not women who just want it to have it. If you don't, I feel like you should be focusing on these women who don't get to choose whether they get to live or die based on a decision that we in America have very freely. We do it all the time. We can date whoever we want. We can marry whoever we want. Yes, many of us are afraid to report these sexual assault cases, but most of the time we don't risk being killed by our family members for doing so. I feel like some solutions that could be implemented by the government in places like these would be educational programs, especially in places where they're very common. We can also use them here in America to help garner that attention, to put pressure on these countries to do something about it. But in places where it's very common, it would be very beneficial. Children tend to be more open to learning because they either don't have that pre-formed opinion that adults have, or because they're just ready to move on to new things. It's very hard to keep a child's attention on one thing for very long. And this is supported by Gopnik, Griffiths, and Lucas's 2015 report. The newer generation will eventually replace the old, and the ideas of the old will go with it. And it's also important not only to just educate people on, don't do it, but tell them why. Tell them why honor killings are bad. Tell them why sexual assault is not proper conduct. So people, even if they don't believe that it's wrong, they won't do it because of the peer pressure of being judged for it. I wouldn't recommend that these places try to change the opinions of the older generations, because that can spark some serious anger and resentment and possibly make the situation more inflamed than it already is, causing more violence to these women. And that's not what we want. We want the opposite. Another thing that I think would be really helpful would be to open shelters, like domestic abuse shelters, so that these women can run somewhere where they won't be, afraid, or if they're being threatened, they could go somewhere where they can hide from this. It's a very successful way of limiting the reaches of domestic abuse and violence, while also many domestic shelters provide counseling and therapy, which is extremely beneficial to victims of abuse, especially from the report done by Sullivan in 2012. If nothing is to change, if none of the things that I talked about were implemented, it's just going to keep going. Honor killings are going to keep happening. Women and girls, young girls, are going to keep being punished for situations that are out of their control or should be in their control. If educating the younger population is done correctly, then that newer generation is likely going to start agreeing more, not everybody, but a good percentage more than now, are going to agree that women should be treated at least better, and they'll be taught social skills and etiquette that stop them from wanting to do these things that they have been told are okay. If women begin to be treated as equals in these areas, then honor killings and things like that will just become a thing of the past. You'll just be hearing about them in history books, not in recent events. What we can do is we can visit these websites such as www.globalcitizen.org and www.ucanews.com and look for articles based on these sexual assault and honor-based violence, and educate yourself just to know the extent of what's going on. And talk to people that you know that are very adamant feminists. Tell them about these things going on and try to persuade them, and tell them about these articles too, on why not only should they be focusing on those problems like gender pay gap and things like that, but they should be focusing on issues of life or death. Feminism in privileged countries like America tend to focus on issues plaguing only America. And I feel like they should, because of the privilege that we have and the resources that we have, we can change what's going on in other countries. And I feel like that's something that not necessarily we have the responsibility to do, but if you're going to claim that you want to help women, it's a great place to start by helping women who are in mortal peril. These kinds of honor killings and sexual assault are far too common. And even though they only happen in a certain reach of the world, it shouldn't be happening in general. Education and opening up these domestic abuse places are going to help solve this problem, but that kind of thing is up to the government. And what we can do is we can educate ourselves and, cause a stir on social media. We're good at that in this generation. And we can cause pressure on these countries to change something. Saudi Arabia, for example, is allowing women to drive because we've been putting social pressure on them to change their rules. And I feel like that's important. Not only to us, but to everybody. Thank you. Oh.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I mean,
Good.
It always annoys me when I see people getting super anal about like pay gap and then them being like, what are honor killings?
Mm-hmm.
Boy.
Heck yeah. Would it be bad if I headed out for now? My friends have shown up to help me with a project.
Probably not. I mean, you were
Yeah,
here
it's
for a
probably
good
fine.
portion.
Mhm.
Sorry.
That's
It
okay.
happens.
That's fine.
I didn't realize how long the speeches were gonna take.
Yeah.
Like they're good
Mhm.
speeches, but it's also I made plans at a bad time.
That's
It
fine.
happens.
Yeah,
That's
we have enough.
alright.
We have enough of us for the recording.
Mhm.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. Sorry guys. Thank you very much.
All
Bye.
right.
Good day.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.
if you guys don't mind, actually, I'm gonna go to the restroom just real quick, and then I'll probably get mine when I come back.
All right.
Right.
Just 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I should pause the recording.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that.
Yep. I'm on pause. There we go.
Wait, let me make sure I got the right order here. Okay. Yep. Okay. Let's start now. Okay. So before I begin, I'm going to ask everyone in the audience, everyone listening, to take a deep breath and to really think about it while you're doing it. So breathing thoughtfully is often overlooked in the busy life of us college students. We're very busy in everything that we do. We hardly think to stop and just take a deep breath every now and then, and how important that can really be. So college students can experience different amounts of stress throughout the semester. Through my personal experience, as well as a few testimonies from my peers and whatnot, I've found that stress tends to accumulate towards the end of the semester when you've got finals. It seems like the workloads are just piling on top of one another, and you got endless amount of work to do. And in our particular case of this year, and in COVID-19, we have had a delayed spring break. It's been almost 3 weeks, and we had no spring break yet, so much needed. Now, college stress is often joked about. It's often used as a phrase, but it is actually supported by research. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to restart that whole thing. My bad. I'm so sorry. I forgot my freaking PowerPoint. Kidding me? Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. And let's see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm gonna restart. Okay. So Before I begin, I'm going to ask everyone in the audience to take a deep breath and to really think about it while you do it. Now, breathing is often overlooked as an important aspect in our busy college lives. Many of us are very busy throughout the day, and we hardly think to stop and to just take a deep breath. And yeah, that's often overlooked. College students experience different amounts of stress throughout the semester. In my own personal experience, as well as testimonies from my other peers, I have found that stress tends to accumulate towards the end of the semester when you've got finals. The workloads seem to be piling on top of one another, and you've got endless amounts of work to do. And in the particular case of this year, and then COVID-19 in general, our spring break has been delayed nearly 3 weeks, and COVID-19 in general has been very stressful for all of us, I'm sure. So it's often joked about college stress, college students having stress. It's often joked about or used as a phrase. It is actually supported by research, however. A 2016 survey conducted by behavioral scientists at the Wayne State University found that out of roughly 100,000 students, nearly 91% of them reported to experience average to tremendous amounts of stress in the 12 months prior to the study being conducted, which is obviously a significant amount of students. So there are many ways to reduce stress, although some of them are oftentimes expensive and they can cost a lot of time as well. And time and money are two things that college students are not very willingly giving out all the time. They're things that we're short on sometimes. Now, my solution that I'm going to provide requires only as much time as the practitioner of the method as they can give, and it costs virtually no money at all. So for the first part of my solution, I'm now going to introduce the man Melo-Strauss. Now, this is the man who climbed Mount Everest in nothing but a pair of gym shorts. He's broken 26 Guinness World Records, actually, enduring things that were thought to be impossible physically, of course, by the average human. And he quotes in a YouTube podcast, if I'm able to make my skin temperature not go down while being exposed to ice cold water, that's power. The same power we can learn to embrace to be able to attack any stressor in the world. And he's referring to any stressor as in a physical stressor, which in his case would be the cold, or a mental stressor. He explains that later. Now, on a deeper level so he believes that he's able to go through these things because of his breathing method that he's devised over the years of enduring these, crazy physical situations like this. And a little bit more in depth about what the breathing method actually is. So on a study conducted on Wim Hof, conducted by neuroscientists at the Wayne State University also, they concluded that his breathing technique allowed him to actually manipulate his brain chemistry in a way that would benefit him in his physical situation. He's actually able to control the release of endorphins in his brain, particularly the opiates and the cannabinoids. And these substances decrease sensitivity to cold and promote a feeling of euphoria, which can be used to combat or to manage stress. So, almost. So these breathing techniques are available to anyone. And with a little bit of research, a little bit of trial and error, you can explore the benefits for yourself, however you can apply them. And reducing stress would be a great application for these breathing methods, which Wim Hof also explains in a few other ways. Now, to visualize the problem and the solution that I'm proposing, poor management of stress can affect our ability to operate properly. If we are overwhelmed with stress, our productivity will tank. But the methods of reducing stress can cost time and money. Such things as therapy and whatnot can cost a lot of time and money. But the breathing exercises, of course, cost very little time and very little money. So the action that I'm going to urge you to take is Wim Hof, the man I mentioned earlier, is actually a journalist who now spends a lot of his time teaching his methods to others and allowing them to personally benefit from them in ways that normal humans would deal with, not just in the extreme cases of cold and whatnot, but in just daily life. And on his website, he actually explicitly explains what the methods are and how you can apply them. I don't necessarily have enough time to actually dig into what they are right now, but I would urge you to at least just go visit the website and to see if these methods could be of use to you, and maybe just try them out. Again, it would take very little time to go and do that. So that is what I would recommend. So to conclude, breathing techniques are easy to practice. They're supported by scientific research, and they have the potential to greatly reduce stress or allow people to manage their stress through some truly extraordinary, neuroscientific ways. And that's about it. So, that was watched.
Oh, that was
That was
good.
really good.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
What the hell are those 9% of people doing that they don't have any stress?
Yeah, they don't have it. They're doing that.
What are they doing?
They're pure
Stress free.
beings.
They're breathing.
Also, I'm afraid of that man.
Yeah. I know.
Oh, I
I'm afraid of that man.
yeah.
Easy.
That man could kill me if he thought hard enough about it.
It's ridiculous.
I'm gonna sit in ice cold water and my body temperature is gonna stay the same.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's a ton of like he goes in and like, he'll go to like these different universities and whatnot, and he'll just like let them test like, just like poke him and prod him and whatnot, and like all like extreme cases like that.
Like a
Like
science
That's
experiment.
crazy.
yeah, it's nuts. But it works. One thing I also didn't really have time for is he had like a class, like he had like a 2-week like super intense class that he had 12 people in, and there was a study where they injected the 12 people that were familiar with like the methods and the breathing techniques and whatnot with it was E. coli. I think they injected them with E. coli, and they injected it into 12 the control group of just like 12 normal people.
Bold.
And,
Yeah, risky. Wow.
and the 12 that was in his group just completely rejected it. Like it was crazy. It just, the immune response was so strong, it just didn't stand a chance. It's crazy. So yeah, I wanted to include that, but I didn't really have enough time. So
Yeah.
God.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I like that.
Yeah.
He made some kind of deal with something I don't want to know about.
Yeah, I've heard about him, but my first time I've ever heard about him was in a JonTron video about Gwyneth Paltrow, because she did an interview with the dude.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they were talking about like fitness and stuff with 17 quotes, but like this guy's actually fitness, and so like he's like legitimately fitness, and about like how you do breathing techniques, like you said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That scares me. He could probably hold his breath underwater for however damn long he wanted.
He could probably kill me with his breath, honestly. He could literally breathe on me and I'd crumple up into nothing.
And he looks like buff too. He looks old, but like
he's beefed.
He's got mad strength.
I read it in the study. He's something like 29% body fat or something like that, which is, but I'm sure that's an adaptation to being that cold. Like
I'm sure it was all breathing. He just breathed away his body fat.
Yeah. The actual science about how because like this was the whole speech was a little bit more about like how it can like the like the neural aspect of it, how it like affects how he can actually manipulate his brain chemistry, but the way in which his body actually reacts to the cold is crazy, because he like if you look at like the one test I was talking about in there, actually they strapped him up and they like measured his skin temperature across his whole body after being subjected to like warmer temperature waters and then back down, and like it just kept cycling on and off, and it stayed at like the constant like temperature that it would be just sitting in like air temperature. So he's able to just like to just regulate that. regulate his skin temperature. And the actual science about how he does that is even crazier than the brain chemistry part. But yeah, that's
That
wild.
makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's like drunk people strength without being drunk.
So it's like, because you can do that. Like people can do that. You know, it's not just him. Like that's his whole point is he's trying to prove that he's not some sort of like genetic freak or something like that. He's
I know
like,
there's some monks that do maybe not
Yeah,
that, but like something like where they like regulate their heartbeat.
oh, they can. The monks, like there's been a couple reports of monks who can literally change the temperature, their skin temperature between two fingers greatly by like by a matter of like degrees, like 5 degrees or something like that, which is nuts. Like that is wild. But yeah, monks do it all the time too. It's because they just sit there and breathe all day. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. Yeah.
I guess I'll go ahead with my speech then.
All right.
Okay. You guys hear me well?
Yeah.
All right. Sure. Okay. Just a second. All right. According to the American Public Transportation Association, one public transit bus replaces 80 to 100 cars of traffic. Being in America, I think we all know the relevance of cars in our society. How even things like getting your driver's license and getting your first car are seen as a rite of passage. Well, today I want to tell you why we need to invest more in public transportation at both an individual and societal level. So first of all, to discuss why we need to do this, one of the first points is that cars create large amounts of pollution. I think we've all heard about the adverse effects of pollution on our environment, and cars are one of the greatest contributors to this. According to acog.org, when relating public transportation pollution compared to car pollution, public transportation produces far fewer quantities of air pollutants like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen oxides per passenger mile. And to hit another point on why we need to invest more in public transportation is heavy traffic. I think we've all had to deal with moments in our lives where we're stuck in traffic and you just roll your eyes waiting, looking at like 100 cars in front of you, waiting hours at times. And when it comes to how public transportation can relieve this, one study or one situation, according to Transportation for America, where a 35-day public transportation strike in Los Angeles caused a 47% increase in traffic congestion. So they had a situation where they had no buses or rails going due to a strike, and people had to deal with much heavier traffic congestion. And this is something that could be relieved with more investment in public transportation. Now, you may ask yourself, how do we do this and how do we increase the amount of public transportation? And one obvious way is to just invest more money into public transportation. So obviously investing more money into public transportation would allow for the creation and manufacturing of more buses, more railways, more everything that will allow people to use their public transportation. And as a side benefit, researchers at the Wisconsin Department of Transportation have found that in the state of Wisconsin, transit has the potential to triple the return on investment if utilized properly. So not only are you going to get the benefits of public transportation, but you also get an economic boost. Now, another reason why, or another way we can do this is to make public transportation normal and accessible. We need to elaborate on this, we need to make public transportation seem attractive and dispel the idea that it is only for the low income, because there's kind of a negative connotation to riding public transportation where people will say, oh, you don't own a car or you can't drive or you're seen as low income. And one of the easiest way to increase investment in public transportation and use it more is to dispel that idea by using advertisements or any sort of social media to inform people about that. And another way to make transportation more normal and accessible, public transportation, is to create higher frequency, reliable bus stops. According to C40 Knowledge in Sao Paulo, Brazil, the city bus networks were divided into main routes and local routes with different frequencies, where main routes had bus stops every 15 minutes and local routes had more infrequent stops. This two-route system caused a 70% increase in ridership in Sao Paulo. And a system like that implemented around America or wherever could really increase use of public transportation. Now, I'd like you to picture a world where we continue to deeply rely on cars, getting caught in downtown traffic constantly, seeing the environment's health dwindle as the pollution billows to the atmosphere. But now picture a world where you don't get caught sitting in downtown traffic, where the sky and the trees look healthier than ever. It's going to be possible if we rely more on public transportation. Now I've talked a bit about some general things that we can do to solve this issue, but now I want to talk about things that we as individuals can do to help. The most obvious thing is to use public transportation more. As college students at UCF, some of you may use the campus bus, or at least be aware of it. This can be an excellent starting point where maybe some days you can decide to take the bus onto campus instead of driving there. And similarly, there are many public bus systems in Orlando, or even public scooters that you may see they can get around the city in. Many cities and locations such as New York have complex subway, train systems, and many other ways to help people move around. At the end of the day, any little bit helps. Whether it be a bus ride every once in a while or a ride on a scooter, every use of public transportation moves us closer to a more public transport dependent society, where we reduce traffic and environmental strain. I hope that the next time you have to go somewhere, you consider riding the bus there for a change. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, that was.
The only place that doesn't have that stigma is New York City.
Yeah,
Oh.
basically.
It's like if you have a car, you're the weirdo.
Yeah, you're the weirdo there.
Dude, when Brightline finally hooks up to Orlando,
That's it.
that's it. It's over.
Damn. Okay.
I can't wait.
Oof.
Oh, man. That was rough for me. Sorry, not you guys. You guys did great.
Mm.
Yeah, you
Alright.
did a pretty good job.